There are 7 NBA players who together perfectly represent the 7 deadly sins, and I'll be covering them all, starting with the sin of lust. Lust is described as an inordinate craving for the pleasures of the body. An NBA player who embodies lust to the fullest extent is none other than Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain is widely regarded as one of the most dominant players in NBA history, holding records that still stand decades after his retirement. But beyond his on-court accomplishments, Wilt became infamous for his off-court lifestyle, particularly when it came to women. In his 1991 autobiography, A View from Above, Chamberlain made one of the most shocking claims in sports history. He wrote that he had been intimate with approximately 20,000 women over the course of his lifetime. Yes, you heard that right, 20,000 women. The claim immediately sparked controversy and disbelief across the sports world and beyond. Let's do the math on this. Wilt claimed he became sexually active at age 15 and wrote the book at age 55, giving him a 40-year span. To reach 20,000 women in 40 years, he would have needed to sleep with 1.4 women per day, every single day, for 4 decades straight. Even accounting for his fame, wealth, and the sexual revolution of the 1960s and 70s, the number seemed almost mathematically impossible to many observers. In interviews promoting the book, Wilt doubled down on the claim. When asked about it, he didn't back down or suggest it was an exaggeration. Instead, he explained his late-night lifestyle and constant travel as factors that made this possible. He described going to clubs and parties in every NBA city, meeting women constantly and having relationships that ranged from one-night encounters to brief affairs. The claim became so infamous that it essentially defined Wilt's legacy off the court. Decades after his death in 1999, the 20,000 women story continues to be referenced in discussions about him. Sports journalists, biographers, and fans still debate whether the number was literal or simply Wilt's way of emphasizing his active romantic life. What's particularly interesting is that Wilt never married and had no known children, despite these claims of thousands of encounters. In later interviews, some who knew him suggested he might have exaggerated for publicity or that the number was meant metaphorically rather than literally. However, Wilt himself never walked back the statement. The reception to Wilt's claim was mixed. Some saw it as the boastful swagger of a legendary athlete, while others criticized it as objectifying women or promoting unhealthy attitudes about relationships. Regardless of how people interpreted it, the claim cemented Wilt Chamberlain as the embodiment of lust in the sports world. A man whose appetite for physical pleasure, at least according to his own account, was truly insatiable. Wrath is defined as uncontrolled feelings of anger, rage, and even hatred. This description is Ron Artest, later known as Meta World Peace, and now Meta Sandiford Artest. Ron Artest had a reputation throughout his career for being an intense, physical, and sometimes volatile player. But nothing defines the sin of wrath in NBA history, quite like the events of November 19, 2004, an incident that would become known as the Malice at the Palace. The Indiana Pacers were playing the Detroit Pistons at the Palace of Auburn Hills. With less than a minute left in the game and the Pacers comfortably ahead, a hard foul by Artest on Ben Wallace sparked an initial confrontation between the two players. The situation appeared to be calming down when Artest, in an unusual move, laid down on the scorer's table to wait out the chaos. Then, a fan in the stands threw a cup of beer that hit Artest in the chest. What happened next changed NBA history forever. Artest immediately charged into the stands, punching a fan he believed had thrown the drink, though it turned out he attacked the wrong person. His teammate Stephen Jackson followed him into the crowd, throwing punches at fans who were confronting Artest. The scene descended into absolute chaos. Players were fighting with fans in the stands. Security struggled to restore order. When Artest made his way back to the court, other fans came onto the floor, and more fights broke out. The entire sequence lasted several minutes and was broadcast live on national television, shocking viewers across the country. The aftermath was severe. NBA Commissioner David Stern handed down the longest suspensions in league history for an on-court incident. Artest was suspended for the remainder of the season, 86 games total, including playoffs. Stephen Jackson received 30 games, and several other players and fans faced suspensions, criminal charges, and lifetime arena bans. The incident had lasting effects on the NBA. Security protocols were completely overhauled. The league implemented stricter alcohol policies at arenas. The relationship between players and fans was fundamentally altered, with new barriers and restrictions put in place to prevent similar incidents. But Artest's history of wrath didn't begin or end with the Malice at the Palace. Throughout his career, he was involved in numerous altercations, received multiple suspensions for violent plays, and was known for his aggressive on-court demeanor. In 2007, he was suspended for elbowing James Harden in the head during a game. He had confrontations with coaches, teammates, and opponents throughout his 17-year NBA career. Interestingly, Artest later changed his name to Meta World Peace in 2011, claiming he wanted to promote a message of peace and positivity. The irony wasn't lost on basketball fans, who remembered the man who had charged into the stands throwing punches now advocating for world peace. He later changed his name again to Meta Sandiford Artest. Despite attempts at rebranding and promoting peace, Ron Artest's legacy is forever tied to that November night in Detroit when his uncontrolled rage led to the most infamous brawl in NBA history. No player better represents the deadly sin of wrath than the man who literally fought fans in the stands on live television. The definition of pride is believing that one is essentially better than others, failing to acknowledge the accomplishments of others, and excessive admiration of the personal self. No NBA player fits this description better than LeBron James. Now, before we go further, let's be clear. LeBron James is one of the greatest basketball players of all time. His accomplishments speak for themselves. 4 NBA championships, 4 MVP awards, and countless records. But his journey to greatness has been marked by moments of excessive pride that perfectly embody this deadly sin. The defining moment of LeBron's pride came on July 9, 2010, at the American Airlines Arena in Miami. After his controversial televised decision special where he announced he was leaving Cleveland to join the Miami Heat, LeBron appeared at a welcome rally that can only be described as over the top. With smoke machines, dramatic lighting, and a concert-like atmosphere, LeBron took the stage alongside new teammates Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh. Then came the moment that would haunt him for years. LeBron grabbed the microphone and made a proclamation that shocked even his supporters.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7.
He was counting championships. LeBron was confidently predicting that the Miami Heat would win at least 7 NBA titles with him on the roster. The crowd went wild, but the basketball world was stunned by the arrogance of the statement. The hubris was breathtaking. Here was a player who had never won a championship, who had famously underperformed in the 2010 playoffs against Boston, predicting a dynasty before playing a single game with his new team. The statement became instant meme material and gave ammunition to everyone who criticized LeBron for leaving Cleveland and forming a super team. What made it worse was that LeBron's first season in Miami ended in failure. The Heat lost to the Dallas Mavericks in the 2011 finals, with LeBron playing poorly in crucial moments. All the championship predictions, all the celebration, all the pride came crashing down as LeBron faced the biggest criticism of his career. To his credit, LeBron eventually won 2 championships with Miami in 2012 and 2013, far short of the 7 he'd predicted. Years later, he would joke about the incident, acknowledging how it looked and how it became a symbol of premature celebration. But the not 1, not 2, not 3 moment wasn't LeBron's only display of pride. Throughout his career, he's referred to himself as the Chosen One, a nickname from his high school days that he embraced, and has made statements comparing himself to Michael Jordan in the GOAT, greatest of all time. Debate. He's also been criticized for controlling his narrative through media allies, for taking credit for teammates' development, and for sometimes appearing to prioritize his legacy over team success. These are debatable points, and LeBron has many defenders, but they contribute to the perception of pride. LeBron's talent has always backed up most of his confidence. But that July night in Miami, when he stood on stage predicting 7 championships before proving he could win even 1 with his new team, LeBron James perfectly embodied the sin of pride, excessive confidence and self-admiration that ultimately had to face reality. Gluttony is characterized by limitless appetite and overindulgence to the point where one is no longer consuming just to live, but rather living to consume. An NBA player who expresses gluttony through his insatiable hunger for statistics is Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook is one of the most explosive and athletic point guards in NBA history. His career has been defined by intensity, competitiveness, and an almost superhuman motor that never seems to stop. But it's also been defined by something else: triple-doubles and the accusations of stat padding that followed them. A triple-double means recording double-digit numbers in 3 statistical categories in a single game, usually points, rebounds, and assists. For decades, averaging a triple-double for an entire season was considered virtually impossible. Oscar Robertson did it in 1961-62, and no one matched that feat for 55 years. Then came Russell Westbrook. In the 2016-17 season, Westbrook averaged a triple-double for the entire year: 31.6 points, 10.7 rebounds, and 10.4 assists per game. It was a historic achievement that earned him the MVP award. But rather than being universally celebrated, Westbrook's accomplishment sparked a debate that would follow him for years. Was he genuinely achieving greatness, or was he stat padding? The accusations intensified when Westbrook averaged a triple-double again in 2017-18, and then again in 2018-19, and then again in 2020-21. What was once considered impossible, Westbrook made routine. He became the NBA's all-time leader in triple-doubles, surpassing Oscar Robertson's record that had stood for decades. But critics pointed to specific behaviors that suggested Westbrook was hunting for stats rather than playing winning basketball. Video analysis showed his teammates sometimes allowing him to grab uncontested rebounds that they could have easily secured. His assist numbers occasionally came from forcing passes in situations where a shot might have been better. His late-game stat chasing when games were already decided became a running joke among NBA fans. The most damning criticism was that despite all these triple-doubles, Westbrook's teams weren't winning championships. His playing style, critics argued, prioritized personal statistics over team efficiency. His usage rate was among the highest in NBA history, meaning he dominated the ball to an extent that some believed hurt his team's overall performance. Westbrook bristled at these accusations. In April 2018, he told reporters he was tired of hearing about stat padding, defending his achievements and pointing out that averaging a triple-double requires incredible consistency and effort, regardless of motivation. He argued that critics were diminishing a genuinely historic accomplishment. The debate continued throughout his career. When Westbrook needed 16 rebounds in the final game of the 2017-18 season to average a triple-double for the year, he got exactly 20, and critics immediately questioned whether his teammates had helped him reach the milestone artificially. Westbrook's gluttony for statistics became so pronounced that it defined how he was perceived. Every rebound was scrutinized, every assist was questioned. His incredible athleticism and competitiveness were undeniable, but so was his apparent obsession with accumulating numbers. The comparison to gluttony is perfect because Westbrook's hunger for triple-doubles seemed insatiable. One historic season wasn't enough. Neither were 2, 3, or 4. He kept consuming stats, piling up triple-doubles, breaking records, and feeding an appetite that appeared limitless. Like gluttony, where eating stops being about nutrition and becomes about the act itself, Westbrook's game sometimes appeared to be about accumulating statistics rather than purely winning basketball games. His legacy will always include both his remarkable achievements and the questions about whether his appetite for personal stats sometimes came at the expense of team success. Sloth is described as reluctance to work or make an effort, also known as laziness. An NBA player whose legendary career was reportedly limited by his work ethic is Shaquille O'Neal. This one requires some context, because calling Shaq lazy seems absurd at first. He's a 4-time NBA champion, 3-time Finals MVP, 15-time All-Star, and one of the most dominant centers in basketball history. He was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. How could someone with that resume be considered slothful? The answer comes from Shaq's longtime teammate and rival, Kobe Bryant. In multiple interviews over the years, Kobe made pointed comments about Shaq's work ethic and conditioning. The most famous came in a 2019 interview when Kobe stated bluntly, "I would have had 12 fucking rings if he had my work ethic." 12 rings. Kobe was saying that Shaq was so naturally talented and dominant that if he'd worked as hard as Kobe did, the Lakers dynasty could have won 12 championships instead of the 3 they captured together from 2000 to 2002. Kobe elaborated on this theme multiple times. He talked about how Shaq would show up to training camp out of shape every year, using the first month of the season to play himself into condition, rather than arriving ready to compete. He described Shaq's reluctance to work on his free throw shooting, which remained a glaring weakness throughout his career, despite Shaq having access to the best coaches and training facilities in the world. In one interview, Kobe said Shaq's laziness drove him crazy during their time together. He described how Shaq could have been the greatest player of all time if he'd committed to year-round conditioning, studied film like Jordan, and worked on his weaknesses with the same intensity he brought to dunking on opponents. The free throw issue is particularly telling. Shaq shot 52.7% from the free throw line for his career, historically bad for a player of his caliber. Teams developed the hack-a-Shaq strategy, intentionally fouling him because he was more likely to miss free throws than make them. This weakness was exploitable and cost his teams games, yet Shaq never significantly improved despite having 19 years to work on it. Shaq's response to Kobe's criticism has been mixed. Sometimes he laughed it off, acknowledging that he could have worked harder. Other times he defended himself, pointing to his championships, MVP awards, and dominance as evidence that his approach worked just fine. He argued that he stayed healthy by not overworking himself and that his way of doing things led to one of the greatest careers in NBA history. But the criticism from Kobe, one of the hardest working players ever, stings because it comes from someone who knew Shaq intimately and saw firsthand what he could have been. Other teammates and coaches made similar observations over the years. Phil Jackson, who coached both Kobe and Shaq, made subtle comments about Shaq's conditioning and preparation that suggested Kobe wasn't alone in his assessment. The tragedy of Sloth is wasted potential, and that's exactly what Kobe was pointing to. Shaq was already great, dominant, unstoppable, a force of nature, but according to those who played with him, he could have been the undisputed greatest of all time if he'd been willing to put in the work off the court that matched his talent on it. Shaq's sloth wasn't about being completely lazy. You can't become a Hall of Famer without tremendous effort in many areas. Rather, it was about not maximizing his incredible gifts, about settling for great when greatest ever was within reach if he just committed to the conditioning, the free throws, and the year-round dedication that separate good from great and great from legendary. Envy is defined as jealousy over the blessings and achievements of others. An NBA player who has displayed these envious attributes on numerous occasions is Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen is one of the greatest players in NBA history. A six-time champion with the Chicago Bulls, seven-time All-Star, and Hall of Famer, Pippen was an integral part of the dynasty that won 6 championships in 8 years during the 1990s. He was widely considered the perfect complement to Michael Jordan, a versatile defender and playmaker who made the Bulls unstoppable. But in 2020 and 2021, Pippen's legacy took a strange turn that revealed deep-seated envy toward his former teammate. The catalyst was ESPN's documentary series The Last Dance, which chronicled the Bulls' final championship season in 1997-98. The series was enormously popular, drawing millions of viewers and reigniting interest in Jordan's career. However, Jordan served as an executive producer on the project, which gave him significant editorial control over how the story was told. Pippen was unhappy with his portrayal in the documentary. While he was shown as a great player, the series focused primarily on Jordan's greatness, and certain episodes highlighted Pippen's contract disputes and his infamous decision to sit out the final play of a 1994 playoff game after Phil Jackson drew up the last shot for Tony Kukoc instead of him. After The Last Dance aired, Pippen began a campaign of criticism against Jordan that shocked the basketball world. In his 2021 memoir, Unguarded, Pippen went after Jordan relentlessly, calling the documentary a glorification of Jordan that minimized the contributions of teammates. In the book and subsequent interviews, Pippen made increasingly bitter statements. He accused Jordan of being condescending and controlling the narrative to make himself look good at others' expense. He questioned Jordan's leadership style and suggested that the Bulls' success was more of a team effort than the Jordan-centric story that had been told for decades. But Pippen went even further, making one of the most provocative claims in NBA discourse. He said Michael Jordan ruined the game of basketball by making it too focused on individual excellence rather than team play. This was a stunning statement, considering Jordan is widely regarded as the greatest player in NBA history and helped popularize basketball globally. Pippen also began promoting LeBron James as the greatest player of all time, explicitly positioning LeBron above Jordan in the GOAT debate. Many observers saw this as transparently motivated by bitterness toward Jordan rather than genuine basketball analysis. The envy became even more apparent when Pippen started criticizing Jordan's actual playing ability, calling him horrible without the supporting cast and suggesting he wasn't as complete a player as his reputation suggested. These comments contradicted decades of Pippen's own previous statements praising Jordan and acknowledging his greatness. What made Pippen's behavior fit the sin of envy so perfectly was that it came from someone who had achieved incredible success himself. 6 championships, Hall of Fame career, widely respected as one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history. But rather than being satisfied with his own legacy, Pippen seemed consumed by jealousy over the fact that Jordan received more credit, more adoration, and more recognition for those Bulls championships. The documentary's success and the renewed celebration of Jordan's career appeared to trigger something in Pippen, a feeling that he hadn't received proper recognition, that Jordan had stolen glory that should have been shared more equally, that his own contributions had been overlooked in favor of the Jordan mythology. Many former teammates and basketball observers were baffled by Pippen's turn. Here was a man who had everything to be proud of, who could have gracefully accepted his role in one of the greatest dynasties in sports history, choosing instead to tear down his former teammate and diminish the accomplishments they achieved together. That's the essence of envy, the inability to celebrate others' success, the bitterness over perceived inequity, the jealousy that poisons one's own achievements. Scottie Pippen, despite 6 rings and a Hall of Fame career, couldn't overcome his envy of Michael Jordan's greater recognition, and in revealing that envy publicly, he perfectly embodied this deadly sin. Greed is described as a selfish and excessive desire to acquire something, usually pertaining to material wealth. An NBA player whose greed led to one of the most infamous quotes in sports history is Latrell Sprewell. Latrell Sprewell was a talented shooting guard who played 13 seasons in the NBA. A four-time All-Star, he was known for his scoring ability and defensive intensity. He helped lead the New York Knicks to the NBA Finals in 1999 and was a key contributor to competitive Minnesota Timberwolves teams in the early 2000s. But Sprewell's career and legacy were defined by two incidents of greed and violence that perfectly capture this deadly sin. First came in 1997 when Sprewell was playing for the Golden State Warriors. During a practice, he got into an altercation with head coach P.J. Carlesimo and physically attacked him, choking him and threatening him before teammates pulled him away. Sprewell returned 20 minutes later and punched Carlesimo in the face. The Warriors terminated his contract, and the NBA suspended him for 1 year, 68 games, the longest suspension for an on-court incident at that time. Sprewell's response to losing his contract, he sued the Warriors and the NBA for $30 million, claiming the punishment was too severe. The lawsuit demonstrated an attitude that would define the rest of his career, an excessive focus on money above all else, including professional relationships and public image. But the incident that truly cemented Sprewell's representation of greed came in 2004. Playing for the Minnesota Timberwolves, Sprewell was offered a 3-year contract extension worth $21 million. This was guaranteed money, financial security that most people could never dream of. Sprewell's response became instantly infamous. He rejected the offer, saying, "I have a family to feed." Let that sink in. Latrell Sprewell turned down $21 million guaranteed dollars because he felt it wasn't enough to feed his family. The comment was so absurdly tone-deaf, so disconnected from the financial reality most people live in, that it became an immediate cultural touchstone for greed and entitlement. To put this in perspective, $21 million would have been approximately $7 million per year. Sprewell was already wealthy from his previous contracts. The idea that this amount was insufficient to support his family was laughable to the public. The average American household income at the time was around $45,000 per year. Sprewell was saying that 155 times that amount annually wasn't enough. The comment revealed pure greed, not satisfaction with wealth that would set up his family for generations, but an insatiable desire for more. It wasn't about need, it was about want. It was about ego, about feeling valued financially above all other considerations. The consequences were severe. No team offered Sprewell a contract after he rejected Minnesota's offer. His NBA career ended not because he couldn't play anymore, but because teams were unwilling to meet his financial demands and deal with his attitude. He was only 34 years old and still capable of contributing, but his greed priced him out of the league. The aftermath got worse. Sprewell faced financial troubles in subsequent years, with his yacht repossessed and legal issues over unpaid bills. The man who turned down $21 million because it wasn't enough to feed his family ended up in financial distress because he overestimated his worth and couldn't manage his ego. Sprewell's story is a cautionary tale about greed. He had talent, success, championships within reach, and financial offers that would have secured his family's future. But his excessive desire for more money, his inability to recognize what he already had as sufficient, led to the premature end of his career and damaged his legacy permanently. The "I have a family to feed" quote has endured for 2 decades as one of the most tone-deaf statements in sports history. It perfectly captures the deadly sin of greed, the selfish, excessive desire for material wealth that blinds someone to reason, gratitude, and reality. Latrell Sprewell represents greed in its purest form. Never satisfied, always wanting more, even when more means losing everything. These 7 NBA players, Wilt Chamberlain, Ron Artest, LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, Shaquille O'Neal, Scottie Pippen, and Latrell Sprewell, each embody one of the 7 deadly sins through their actions, attitudes, and legacies. From lust to greed, their stories remind us that even the greatest athletes are human, capable of the same flaws and vices that have defined human nature for centuries. Their talents made them legends, but their sins made them unforgettable.